Yeah, we can. We can hear you, Bernard.
All right, excellent. Well, hey, I'd like to welcome everyone too. Let you know it's raining here in Port Angeles too. I'm sorry, can't be there.
So Bernard Corman is the director of ONRC, and my name is Vera Trainer. I'm the aquatic sciences director here. I started last January, so it's really a pleasure after COVID to revive these evening seminar series, and we thank Tom Rosman for his support of this series. So tonight is a real treat because I don't know how many of you have said, what do those West Fork environmental people do? And we see those trucks in town all the time. Where are they driving to? And so tonight we're going to get some answers to that question. So we're so happy to bring Phil Peterson here. He's a professional fisheries biologist. He got his master's in science at University of Washington a couple years ago, and he's had over 40 years experience specializing in Pacific Northwest water, land use, and fishery subjects. And without saying too much more, I'm going to turn it over. And please help yourself to coffee, tea, and if you'd like a book, please take a book. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Appreciate it. Yeah, just get up, move around, ask questions. You get, if you think I'm dragging, just tell me to move along. Very casual tonight. I'm glad to be here. Very grateful that we were extended the invitation to talk tonight. And it certainly is important to reference the Roseman evening talks and the Family Education Fund. This is my own description of what the endowment is, so if I'm off track, forgive me on that. But I did a little research about the endowment and the work that the Roseman brothers did and their nephew Tom. So I feel somewhat prepared in that regard. And I think West Fork's tagline, putting science to work, fits right in with the ethic that the Roseman brothers had of applying the sciences that they knew in numerical modeling of weather prediction and they pursued. So with that, appreciate very much the opportunity to take part in this lecture series. When Vera first suggested I do this, I thought, well, let's kind of, I mean, I didn't know exactly what I had to offer as a business owner, but we do pursue, the application of science in the natural resources field. We cover a lot of things. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about what it is that we do out here. So I did talk to Christy. Okay, so I'm gonna have to figure this out first.
That's just a quick one slide. Let's see. So Courtney, it's not advancing. Let's see.
You should, yes, you should be able to either use the space bar or click on the slide a couple of times. There we go.
So we just clicked
Okay,
here.
so
Oh, you did that. I think,
Do you have the little dongle plugged in?
yeah.
No,
Okay.
That's not.
Well, I just clicked here and I think it worked. I don't want to
Okay,
mess
so
anything up.
I'll use the mouse.
Okay.
It's my correction, should be 1970.
This is 1970?
Oh, 1970.
Is it? Okay. Well, I asked Christy if she could find me
The roundhouse hadn't been built. 65.
Oh, really? Okay, well, thank you for correcting me. I asked Christy, I said,
I'll call Chris.
thank you, I appreciate that. But I definitely wanted to include something there, and I searched the web, and I couldn't find anything, and I was grateful that Christy came up with this. So there's the mill in all its glory. It was quite an operation. I'm sure at the time. The three brothers, as I understand, were operating this. One of those was your father.
Yes.
Yeah. So, at any rate, a little bit of history here. Works Forum, by the way, been here since 1930. Christie's been there for not that long. She'd be mad at me if I said that. Anyway, but since coming to, into town, I've met her and she's quite a resource. Okay, just see if we can advance this. Here we go. Okay, so the title of my talk tonight, Small Business with Big Ties to the Olympic Peninsula. And, so you know more about that. We'll tell you as much as I can about West Fork and what we do tonight. Just a word about small business in America before we move on to what we do. 33.3 million small businesses in the US. We're just one of those. Definitely an engine for new jobs. Between 1995 and 2021, Business Administration says that the small business was responsible for 63% of those, employing nearly half of the American workforce. But sadly, only about 50% of small businesses survive their first 5 years. So this is 20 years for us this year. So we're grateful to have made it this far. And as far as challenges, cash flow always comes up. Inflation is eating our lunch right now, for sure. And finding qualified applicants, believe it or not, is a challenge. Finding people with a real work ethic that want to spend day after day after day, week after week, year after year in the woods isn't as easy as it used to be. This diagram here, this drop in, this is Washington new business applications, new business license applications. This drop here is April 2020, and everybody knows what that was. That was when COVID came through. By July, people had decided things weren't so bad and that they weren't going to get locked down, and new business applications were up. Probably a real difference of businesses. But government policy definitely has an impact on small business. So the things that you may hear in the news or experience for yourself as someone who may be participating in small business is real. So you talked about our trucks. So there's one we drove the wheels off of. Didn't make it back from Eastern Washington. This is more like what you see out there, and it definitely, we put on 208,000 miles in 2023, and we're probably on track to do the same this year in pursuit of our work. We went out to Washington, Oregon, parts of Idaho, down into California. So we put on the miles. But no business is just buildings and people, I mean, and vehicles and equipment. It's really people. It's that's the heart and soul of your business. I have 12 permanent employees. Here they are. Some of these folks have been with me for nearly 15 years, and very grateful for their services. Don't know what to say. I'd like to introduce each one of them. Don't know if I should go through. This is Dakota Bogle. He's a wildlife and fisheries and forester. He's got a 2-year degree from Green River College. Carson Swart, he's from Bellingham with a technical degree up there. This is our shop manager, Ronnie Larson. Jared Yates. Jared runs the screw traps out of the Bogue Shield and Dickey. You probably see Jared around here a lot. He stayed with the ONRC lodging. This is Heidi Barnett. She's got a master's in aquatic ecology from UBC, and she can hold her own with anybody. She's a great scientist. Carson Cox is actually a journeyman carpenter and a biologist as well. Eric Arnold is our RFID specialist. Sean Olson handles our GIS. Gavin Nishiori, Army veteran, employed in forward positions in Afghanistan. He's one of our foresters. Chris Eriks, you may know Chris as well. He's done a lot of the LiDAR and hyperspectral work for ONRC and University of Washington. And Jacob Neff, he's one of our foresters. And me, I've got a fisheries degree. I've worked for the University of Washington as a fisheries research biologist. I worked for Simpson Timber Company for 10 years. I started with the state in the old Department of Fisheries. Had a trailer up in the back of the DNR building here in Forks. I spent the first part of my career from 1976 to 1985 right here in Forks. And I'll always be grateful for the start I got here in Forks, because I spent nothing but field time. I was a field biologist. I was out there every day, and it was a great start to a good career. Trees and fish have paid my family's bills all these years, and we give back where we can. So that's the crew. Really a nice bunch of people, hardworking, very dedicated. Here's our business operations, and this is maybe a little odd, but we're not just an environmental services company. We've got a manufacturing and fabrication capability, and we also have RFID products and services. RFID, if you have a dog or cat, they probably have a little computer chip in the nape of their neck. That's what RFID, radio frequency identification. There are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of fish that are implanted with those little tip tags on an annual basis. And we track those fish. We build one-of-a-kind antennas for some of the mainstay dams on the Columbia Snake. We'll come back to that at the end of the talk, but you can see that most of our revenue comes from our environmental services. These are the clients we have. Here on the peninsula, we work with the Billiard Tribe, the Quinault Tribe. We've got a project that's for the cause this year. Small landowners, federal and state agencies, universities, consulting companies, nonprofit organizations. There are a lot of those these days, it seems like, and construction folks. The manufacturing and fabrication supports our own internal products, but also outside orders. And we'll show you a little bit of that in a minute. On the RFID side, it's just an abbreviated list of what our environmental services are, because we're tracking fish and wildlife with those pin tags. And if you set out to build an environmental consulting business, this would not be it. It just wouldn't be. But these different aspects of our company have just grown organically, so that our manufacturing, we decided at one point, our projects were getting held up because of somebody else's schedule. And so we went ahead and invested in the shop. So we've got some CNC machines and a press brake and welders to serve the RFID product side of things. And so at the polar ends between the environmental services and the manufacturing, there's not much crossover, but in between there is, and it's just a business model that has made sense. And each one of these activity centers, as we call them, contribute every year. And when one is down, the other is up, and it's served to level out some of the seasonality we have in environmental services. So that's Westport. In Tumwater, we've got 3 buildings. This is our shop. This is our main warehouse where our offices are as well. We keep our day-to-day field equipment in here, and then this is our warehouse down there, where we do a lot of assembly of our larger projects, and where we keep our other big toys, like bigger boats and that kind of thing. Part of the ethic that we've got as a small business is to invest in communities where we work. And this is an investment that I'm making in Forks. This is the Forks Lawn Building. It's 490 South Forks Avenue, right downtown. Fortunately, I've got a good local builder in Bear Creek Builders, Barry and Goodson, who's helped me put this back together, because we had some problems. This is area that grew up on top the other day, and we were discovering many more problems than we realized that we had in this building. This entire section is rotted. It's all the way down the other side. So anyway, we're definitely investing in the communities where we work these days. We call it our outpost. I call it money pit right now. Sometimes that's just the way things go. So this is the meat and potatoes of what we're doing out here. These are the big projects that we have that I'm going to be talking a little bit more about. Smolt trapping, the salmon on their way to the sea. We're trapping those fish on the Boga Shield and the Dickey and Clearwater rivers. Forest inventory plots and some forest and wetland work we're doing through the DNR. LiDAR and multispectral imaging for ONRC and UW. Stream typing for some of the timber concerns here, especially Rainier before they sold. Habitat characterization and mapping for the canals, the cause, and another contractor natural systems design. If you are familiar with some of these big log jams that are being put in the rivers artificially, those are the folks that design those. And we're subbing to them on a couple of these other projects to characterize the habitat and help in their selection of sites where they would put these. Culvert assessments. We're doing a project, or it's just wrapped up for the canals. All the stoppages on 101 and around the peninsula as you go around, associated with the culvert replacements. And we'll come back to that. I'm not responsible, our company's not responsible. This was all on reservation work. So first of all, smolt trapping. This is a live box, on the Dickey after a night of a good coho smolt migration. Most of these fish are coho smolts, coho salmon. There's a few trout in here. But that's our target species, and we catch these with what we call rotary screw traps. That's RST. This is an 8-footer. If you're probably familiar with these, you may have seen some. We have one on the Dickey just above the 5,000 line. This is an invention by a fisheries biologist down in Oregon. Worked for the Department of Fish and Wildlife down there in 1980. They came up with a better mousetrap. We were using what we call the big scoop traps. When I was out here in the early 80s and late 70s. We operated one of those on the Clearwater. It was just a big scoop. I mean, and the fish rode up through it and then into the live box. And when you got that thing plugged up with debris, it was just like a diving fish lure. It was really a wild ride at night when the water was high. So this is on the Clearwater, another 8-footer. It's a little different design. One on the Boga Shield. We got the contract late in the game, and we just were able to procure a code, and so we had to build everything else around it. EG Solutions down in Eugene. This is a stock output right here that we have operating down on the Clearwater. Then a little 5-footer over on the Dickey, just above the 5,000 line, and the water comes down into the cone and hits these veins and it turns it around, and the fish, it's like a big corkscrew in there, and the fish ride through there and they're dumped out into the live box and they can't swim back out. So that's the principle they work on. So you might ask, well, how do you come up with a population estimate? And the way we do that is through market capture estimates and modeling. So we put these little tags. This is an elastomer tag that we inject with a very, very fine hypodermic needle. So we'll catch a large number of fish, and we'll mark at least 100 of those, and we'll put them back upstream, and then they'll come through the next night or over the next several weeks, and we'll estimate our recapture rate from the numbers that we catch. So we change our mark every week, and most of them are through within 3 weeks. Most of them are coming through in the first week. There's a few stragglers in the second week, and occasional fish in the third week. Then we have a population model. We plug these data into And the higher your recapture rate, the better your numbers are, the tighter your estimates, so. That's what these are. These are big mark recapture experiments. If we're catching. If we've got 8%, 9%, 10% recapture, I'm real happy. On the Dickey, on that, flows really dropped down. We put some panels out. We made capture as many as 40% recapture, which really gives us some high numbers. So these numbers are important for the tribes to make their preseason predictions for the adults coming back. That's why we do this. So for advanced planning for the fisheries. And living in ports, everybody knows high water can hit just about any time in the springtime. We raise the cone up and just ride that out. And if we're lucky enough to pull it shore, we'll do that. I actually had one of my guys sleep out here on the trap, wrote it out. He said it was safer than going back and forth to the trap and all night long in the boat. So I didn't think very much of that. We're not doing that anymore. This is assembly of that boat shield trap. This is a pontoon system and a hanging system of our own design and fabrication in our shop. We had these 3-foot pontoons welded by outfit in Kingston called PNP, Pacific Netting Products. They handle all kinds of welding of HDPE plastics. And then we built a framework around it. This frame right here is what the cone is fastened into. There's a set of bearings that aren't assembled yet that cone shaft fits to, and then you just drop it in and mix it up and lower it down. So that is another view. So this is a 1995 trap that we're reconditioning in our shop. These things aren't cheap. They're about $80,000 a pop these days, and we're going to get this one back in shape and ready for at least a spare. About that's $10,000 anyway. It's a good way to do it. We rebuilt the pontoons on this. They were all dented up, so we put new foam in them. New bars across here, new bearing across the front. So that's some of the work that we do in our shop that so that's about it for the smolt trapping. And moving on to our forestry work. That's the trees is where the streams the streams and the trees is where everything meets in the riparian area, and that's where all the action is. That's where the habitat quality is derived for the streams within the riparian area. And so that's basically where we've lived all our professional lives is in the riparian area, but we branched out into the uplands and forestry as well. And so we actually have 3 foresters on staff now, and we're doing a statewide inventory of plots for the state. So the green dots all over, you can see there's a hefty number here in Olympic experimental forest. It's a nested fixed radius design. Do we have any budding foresters in the audience tonight that can tell me the radius of these plots? No? Okay. Live and dead trees, we measure a lot of different things. Also, the canopy cover, closure, get down the wood. So it's fairly scripted plot inventory work for the DNR. The red validation blocks are used to assess the accuracy of the model predictions. They're 3.6 acre rectangular plots. And then there are 9 plots in there. One of them is an estimation plot, the same as we do for those green dots, and then the other plots within that red plot are abbreviated data collection on those. all kinds of weather. Our guys are out there measuring tree heights and diameters and all the standard forestry work. Forest and wetland research that's going on. This is what we call a SEMA project. It's state-funded research, cooperative monitoring, evaluation, and research committee that funds this work. Forest and wetlands. The DNR regulations for forest wetlands are simply, you can log them, you have to yard away, but there is some concern about the effects of downstream water quality and how the hydrology works through these systems. So there's a network of 20 sites, 3 plots each, and they're scattered throughout the peninsula. There's any number of them up in the Dickey country, as you might imagine. And we auger in these wells, and then we instrument those wells. So these forest and wetlands are all underlain by this gray clay. So there's, what we have to do is auger down to that gray clay layer. It's usually down anywhere from 4 to 6 feet. And we put in the well casings with well point, backfill with sand around the casing, and then cap that with the clay that came out of the hole. And it's a long-term project, so they're looking at regrowth of those sites and how the hydrology changes, how the water depth changes, and how the functions of those forest wetlands serve the headwaters of these little streams where they lie. That's an ongoing project. It'll be out there for quite a while. There's several sites up on the fish tree farm. We might see Joe Staley up here tonight. This is the crew who's doing that work. They were pretty dirty. They got the inside of my truck absolutely filthy that day. So remote sensing, LiDAR and hyperspectral data. There's been a lot of this work going on. We've done quite a bit of this. And Chris Erickson is the fellow who does this for us. This is our the Tree 600 hexacopter with a LiDAR scanner attached to the bottom of it, and we're out here in the Olympic Experimental Forest doing detailed LiDAR mapping. So, oops. So there's a fair amount of mission planning that has to happen before we ever take off. There's certain overlap that we need because of the data dispersion of the lasers as it goes down. So we've got to stay above the highest trees so we don't crash. We have had that unfortunate experience, but Chris does a masterful job of flying in some pretty tough terrain. The detail that you can see in these LiDAR point clouds is pretty remarkable. So we're all familiar with and the droopy top of the hemlock. That's what you're seeing right there, and then the more upright nature of the Douglas fir. So I think that there are some of Bernard's students working on tree identification, and I'm just not sure what the algorithms they're working on, but certainly this LiDAR and the detail that they can see in these point clouds are instrumental in making some of those determinations automatically. So we're slowly working our foresters, our boots on the ground foresters out of a job, at least for certain kinds of inventory work. Real difference between the state collected LiDAR and the UAS LiDAR. These are images of a 1 foot swath that was cut through the point clouds of 2 sets of data, exactly the same location. And you can see the level of detail, the number of points that you get. Estimated here 1.3 points per square foot in the state LiDAR, and more than 16 points per square foot in the UAS LiDAR. So this is the ground level, the ground right there that you can see, and then the canopy imagery. High resolution terrain and forest canopy models are readily available from these data. You can see the equipment tracks and whatnot, the road ditch lines. You can just see so much detail in this. There was a time when we went out with aerial photos, and we would pinprick the aerial photos, and then we'd make annotations on the back of those photos, and we didn't have this kind of detail and field mapping to work with, but it's a tremendous asset for the forest engineers and anybody doing detailed ecological studies. Young plantation forestry, I think, is going to get a boost, probably from some of the hyperspectral data. And I'm not going to try to give you a treatise on hyperspectral data because I'm not qualified. But I believe your speaker next month, Allie Cooper, is going to be talking about her experiences with hyperspectral in some ways. And she'll be able to give you some good information on that. Suffice it to say that the electromagnetic spectrum is broken into, based on its different wavelengths, different wavelengths, and we only see a very small part of that entire spectral group of waves. You've got X-rays on one end and then radio waves on the other, and you've got visible light for us, and anyway, right in the middle. So you can take that, and this is combining the red, blue, and green spectral signatures into one image. But you can also do some interesting things and create some false color images. And this happens to be, I believe, Chris told me this was an NDVI, a normalized difference vegetation index. There are a lot of different indexes that you can create with different formulas and algorithms, and you can see what your human eye can't through these kinds of images. And you may want to see where there's moisture being wasted for agricultural purposes. This has been highly useful. Seeing where they're losing moisture, where plants are stressed, and you can see some of the same kinds of things in young forests. And I'll leave that to Alan to describe to you in more detail. We'll just leave it at that. But the false images that can be created with the different spectral data is really quite remarkable and quite useful. So some of the other things that we're doing with our drones, we're actually, this is an image where we're actually counting the number of pieces in log jams. This happens to be over on Hirsch Creek. So for a long time, as biologists and stream scientists, we've gone out and collected information on log jams. And some of the basic information is just, well, how many log jams do you have, and what's their distribution, what's their frequency, how big are they, what's their volume, how many key pieces do you have in those jams, things like that. And so there's a certain amount of that information that we can get very quickly with our LiDAR. And in this case, Chris has sliced the top, I think, everything above 10 feet was just sliced off. And so what you're left with is the LiDAR imagery of everything below that. And we compared our stream crews estimate of log jams and large pieces of wood, key pieces, to what we were able to see in our LiDAR imagery, and it was remarkably close. So I think there's some real hope for doing extensive wood surveys. And we can talk a little bit more about wood in a minute and why it's important in streams. Oh boy, this is going to be faint. This is sockeye salmon. I'm going to start the video. Mike's got it. You grab the lights here. You can And it's an interesting photo. There we go. So there's some cloud cover and it's being reflected off the water surface. But these areas where the silt's been cleaned off is where the fish have spawned. Sitting up in All River. Maybe I can start that again. Let me try one more time.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. One more time. These are adult sockeye on the spawning grounds in the upper Peninsula. We're gonna do a pilot project this year and see if we can, we were flying, this is a big open area where we were flying on the main river. But we were able to fly sub canopy as well and got great detail on some of the side channels that we're trying to protect and with the artificial long channels. So anyway, another kind of fun project. Using the drone. Okay, moving on to another kind of project that we do out here on the peninsula, and it's stream surveys to determine state water types. Probably many of you have heard of type F streams and type N streams. Type F streams are streams with fish in them, streams that support fish. And so it's important to know where that last fish is and what's stopping their upstream movement. The DNR uses those stream types because there are larger buffers on type F streams than there are on type N streams. And so that's why it's important. We've done a lot of those surveys. This is our state map through 2022. You can see that we don't do quite as much of this on the peninsula as we do, say, down in Southwest Washington. But nonetheless, these are important surveys. Okay, so the different types of obstructions that fish run into in small streams. 75% of the fish we find as the last fish in these headwater streams are cutthroat trout. But we have just straight up waterfalls of one kind or another. This is in some compact sediment. This is just a boulder cascade. Sometimes you just run into, it just spans out into a wetland with skunk cabbage or other grasses. Sometimes it's a steep cascade, but those are all things that tend to stop fish from moving upstream. And that's the point we're looking for in these surveys. Yes, the number of surveys here that we've done over the years, over 6,300 surveys through 2022. And you can't see that last column because of that overlay there, but we've done, we corrected the DNR stream type maps for 1,100, almost 1,200 miles of stream. So that's enough to get you from here to Bakersfield in California. I'm not bashing the DNR stream layer, but it's notoriously inaccurate, and there's constantly upgrading that stream layer. And it's really important in terms of the timber harvest. Yeah, now.
Well, now you're annotating. Maybe just click that red X at the bottom there. Okay, now try.
Sorry about that. I don't do this every day. I love this picture. This is a picture of our crew, habitat characterization and mapping. If you knew the personalities of these three people, this picture would make a lot of sense. George is humored, but he's sticking to his numbers. He's sticking to his data. We're always having a good time. Claire just dumped herself all the way under. All the way. She's a good sport. She was one of our great technicians this this summer. Anyway. In 2022 and 23, we mapped over 40 miles of stream and assessed the habitat in that. Mainly on the Queets and Clearwater. This last river, this last season on this river, which is the Hoko, we mapped 10 miles. So I talked a little bit about log jam characterization a minute ago. These are some of the things that we measure. Is it channel spanning? Yes or no? How many key pieces are there in it? Key piece is the piece that is doing something functionally important to stabilize that jam. Those are usually large pieces. They usually have root wads on them. They usually recruit them right on the stream bank. Primary, secondary functions. Is this jam recent or is it a relic jam? Many of the jams that we see these days are relic, because we're going through a period of decreased recruitment from our riparian areas due to the timber harvest in the 60s through the 80s and 90s. Jam size, the length, width, the height, we're trying to get some sense of what the volume is of wood in these jams, and the porosity of the jams depends on the piece organization and the density of the jam itself. The percent of the channel that it's blocking. So if this is a yes, then this is 100. If this is no, then it could be anything down to 10 to 15%. So here's a view of some data. These blue dots are pools. And this is the same channel, Christmas Creek, and this is the heat map of the jams. So the heat map is just showing where the jams are most dense, where the highest frequency jams are. And as you can see, you know, the pools tend to line up with the jams. So we'll know that the young salmon and steelhead, many species need pools in these streams. And so the wood is what's forcing agent, we call it. It creates those pools. That's why wood is important in streams. The LiDAR can be a useful tool for monitoring. This is just showing the red lines here are 2011 flight. The green is the more recent 2023 flights, and what you're looking at here are just changes in the amount of the mass of gravel and soil in the channel and on the near stream bank. So we think there's a lot of potential to have a virtual monitoring tool. You can cut a slice anywhere you want to along your stream profile and get these kind of data with repeated measurements. Culvert assessments. As I said, none of those highway projects are attributable to us. This happens to be a culvert that we were assessing on the Quinault Reservation. While we were jumping at that culvert, there were numerous fish that were jumping to get upstream. Not all the culverts that are being replaced are present this significant a barrier to fish, but some do. If you want to read more about it, there's a 284-page manual that the Department of Fish and Wildlife puts out that will tell you a lot more than you ever wanted to know about culverts and fish passage and all of that. The current bill for all these culverts that are being replaced is $7.8 billion. That's right, billion with a B. It's staggering that have seen this. I've watched this number climb from 900 million to where it is now. This most recent number is from legislative hearing just in the past several weeks. So that essentially wraps up the work that we're doing on the peninsula. We do a lot more different kinds of things, and I wanted to bring it back to our organization. And all I wanted to reference here is that we cross train, we cross work in our business, and that's what allows us to do the scope of things that we produce for people. One of those is our pit tag barges, and here's an example of one that we put out on the Columbia River for NOAA Fisheries. This is our crew out there. We got Jared manning the rescue boat, basically. This is Eric Arnold. He's our head RFID guy, and this is our GIS guy out there on the barge. So what you can't see is that this all is connected to a barge of a whole different dimension. We're setting this down in the Columbia River. We have two of these kinds of barges in the Walla Walla River. We've got one in the Wainuchi. We've got another one that's going to go in on the Methow. There's two in the Green River on the west side of the state, and this one is being moved up to the Yakima River. So these detect those little tags I was talking about, the RFID bit tags, and this is a system that we designed for deep water. The smolts tend to travel on the surface, but the typical pit tag antenna, you anchor to the bottom of the stream, and in smaller streams that works just great. But in bigger rivers, the fish are in the upper water column, and you have no access to them with antennas that are anchored to the bottom. And so this is a system we came up with for detecting fish high in the water column. There's a PLC in there. Each one of these winches is controlled by program in there. There's proximity switches on the antennas, and when they get to a certain point, they lock in. Solar panels are RFID multiplexer and equipment there. So we don't have any of these on the peninsula. I'm hoping that we can get some pit tag work established on some of these rivers. The Department of Fish and Wildlife is interested, so I'm not sure it would be this, but you can get a really interesting amount of data from this kind of a system. So here's the location of that barge, and the size of the circle represents the number of fish that we got from these different locations that we detected from all these different locations. So all the way up in Canada in the Okanagan lake system and down into the Salmon River. So pretty effective. We were hoping that the Corps of Engineers would adopt this kind of technology for down below the dams, and they still may. But at this point, it was an experimental project that has been seeing use in the smaller tributaries of the Columbia River. So most talks end with a question slide, and I thought these last two slides was probably enough to just maybe go for a question or two, and that's why I put them in there. That's the end of what I had prepared for you this evening. But happy to entertain any questions about the work we do, or the company, or the people that populate our company. Yes.
Bill, Randy Nissenbrink, retired from DNR.
Randy.
It's around way back when. Anyway, a couple of questions. One is, have you ever looked at, a couple different times we had, I'll say the opportunity to dismantle log jams. And for as big as they look, they're only good in their mass. When you take them apart, they're garbage. You might find one or two key pieces. Most of the mass turns out to be just, you couldn't pick it up with a track or anything like that. It just crumbles. In their place, though, they function just fine. Just an observation.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and that's why those key pieces are so important. So those big, big spruce that are on the banks of Hirsch Creek, and the few that are on the banks of Miller, and some of those, they're really valuable. Because they will fall in and hopefully lodge. If they come in with a rib ball, there's a good chance they're gonna lodge in those tributaries, and they'll rack up all the rest of the stuff that's coming through that you're talking about.
Another question has to do with fish blockages, and in the timber fish wildlife agreement in the early 90s, forest landowners were directed to do a total inventory of all the road systems from main lines to short logging spurs, and identify all the drainage structures in there, and then prioritize which had the biggest bang for the buck in terms of releasing habitat upstream. So that was done, and I think that the inventory had to be done by like 1995, and then begin work right away in those highest bang for the buck streams.
Yep.
And so I know between 95 and probably 2005, mostly in the first half of that, there were miles of stream habitat opened up by replacing some of those in those high value streams. Is anybody keeping track of, number one, the miles opened up, and then the ensuing data after that, well, okay, we've opened up 6.2 miles or 3.1 miles. What did the fish do? Is there any population to come up and occupy it, or is there a build it and they'll come kind of a? No.
Yeah, well, good question. WFPA tracks that stuff, pretty carefully. They were for a while. I don't know if, and most of that work's been done, as you said. The inventory was done and they had 15 years to basically get it done. And, we still have a little bit of work that comes through on those, what we call RMAP, sites, but not much. Most of that's been done. As far as tracking what the fish are doing, a lot of those culverts were partial blockages, partial barriers. We did a fair amount of original research and looked at partial passage, and so it's a mixed bag. I mean, but most of those culverts were in these headwater streams where it was just resident cut through.
The numbers should be pretty astounding for what was, there was an estimation made that if we fix this pipe, we'll open up, some number, and it could be 500 feet, but it also could be 5 miles. So anyway, the numbers should blow people right out of the water. What it resulted in terms of fish, that's the question.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's a long conversation, and I'm pretty opinionated about parts of that discussion and just what benefits we're gonna see out of it. But that's, like I said, a whole nother conversation. And just for audience sake, I started out here, as I said, out behind the DNR. Jeff Cedarholm was a mentor for me, and Randy, you knew him well. I haven't talked about the riverine ponds that I did my research on. And how that whole thing was discovered, and how Jeff put that whole story together. But so I'll give you a quick thumbnail sketch of that. Coho during the winter time, they're a fish that likes calm water, and so a lot of those fish move into what we call riverine ponds or off-channel ponds during the winter time. And that was the topic of my master's thesis, and I worked down there on the Clearwater. But just an interesting footnote to that, that some of you may remember Russ Thomas, who was the owner of Pay and Save here in town. And Russ would fish those ponds in the wintertime, and he caught some baby salmon in there one time, and he grabbed Jeff off to the side and said, what are these little salmon doing in these ponds? And that's how the whole idea of these off-channel ponds got started. So never underestimate the lore of the value of information from an observer who's really paying attention out there in the field. But Jeff Cedarholm was a huge help to me. He was a mentor in my career. And I have a lot of fond memories about the DNR and a lot of those.
Those ponds were built and then kind of let go because some initial research was done and they just were kind of left, and some of them, the structures were breaking down, and the Pacific Salmon Coalition in the last decade got some bucks and certainly had the interest, went in and started just little tweaks of putting a pipe in some beaver dam to help fish get through, and a whole list of things, but it really brought a lot of those back to life. And the water's there, the fish are there. They're really always thought were a totally unique little microsystem within the whole river drainage.
They are. Well,
You spoke a lot about coho salmon, but you didn't mention anything about steelhead.
yeah.
And did any of the things you do apply to them? Did you actually monitor those populations?
We do, the steelhead, we're making population estimates just like we are at Norfolk. And, you know, it's a whole different management program for those, but yeah, those numbers are delivered to the tribes. When we get out of the screw trap, so we're marking those steelhead as well and recapturing them.
Are there any questions online?
There's nothing in the chat right now. For anyone who's online, if you have a question, feel free to speak up.
Any other questions here?
Yeah, so you mentioned the discrepancy in data, with the F and N typing. And I was gonna relate back to, I can remember doing stream typing since back in the '70s when it was type 1, 2, 3, and type 5. So there's scans of data that DNR foresters did as a matter of timber sales preparation. The tribes were right in there with us and behind us doing scans of typing. And so then this new category came in of F and M type streams, and you mentioned the breakdown in DNR's data. So is the breakdown in actual field gathered data, or is it how the system or the computer reads that data that correlates all the pieces together?
Well, you probably remember in 2005, they put together what was called the fish model, right? And this model was supposed to be able to delineate the F and the N streams and those breaks in between. And honestly, it didn't work very well. It was primarily a warehouser project, and I'll just say it, that there was a group of people that were moving that through, and they thought it was going to solve all the problems, and we would have the correct water types. But as you can see, I mean, we do it all day long, and so those old water types you were talking about got thrown out, and they implemented the model, and so we were left with the model and with correcting that. But this is a subject that just won't go away. The DNR or the state Chamber Committee just advertised a very large project for looking at research to determine where the FN breaks are. But my contention is that you need to get out there on the ground and just find it, that works. We use an electric fisher, a backpack electric fisher to find those breaks, and it's very effective. Yes.
My name is Ken. I work with the So you mentioned that you've been working on a program for some kind. Can you talk more about what sites you're looking at and this data?
Yeah, so that forested wetland project is a senior project. There's a wetland scientist, Tanner Williamson, who works for the Northwest Indian Fish Commission, who is the PI on that project. And we worked for Tanner putting those sites in. I believe there are 3 sites up there on a fish tree farm. There's a whole group of them out here on the Dickey, and then there are several down there off Delta Creek Road. But that's a long-term project, and it's gonna be a very interesting one. Tanner's a top-notch wetland scientist, so yeah, give him a call down there at the commission. Yes.
Your work augering in those forested wetlands, has that told you anything about previous activity around those wetlands, timber harvest, road construction? I mean, are you seeing any interesting things in the forest pulled out of those wetlands that have been near forest activity?
Our job is to get those wells in and get them in as fast as we could and get it down to clay as quickly as we could. So, I think Tanner would probably have some observations for you. I don't. That's the short answer, Randy.
Thanks.
Yes, there's a question, when you're drilling the 4 holes that has a little shallow wells, are you using a screw to get that back up, or is it something that actually creates a bore?
It's an auger, it's a gas operated auger, and we auger it down through, and you can reverse it and bring it up.
But it's not one solid 4.
No, it's a Yeah,
Thanks.
yes, that's right. We got stuck once and we had grid on the switch. Normally you take your hand off the switch and it stops, right? But the grid was keeping the switch from stopping this thing and it got away from us and it just started spinning. It was totally out of control. And it augured right down to the bottom and finally it just choked off. We worked and worked and worked. It had grabbed a, log down in there and, oh my goodness. It was terrible getting that thing out of there. We did quite a bit getting it out. Fortunately, we didn't get it broken.
I was just gonna say, on that note, please let's give Phil a big round of applause. I think he'll be staying for a little bit if anybody wants to ask questions informally. Thank you all for coming so much, and please come to the next one. You already got a little advertisement for it. It will be on the Western Red Cedar and Multispectral Imaging by Ali Cooper, and that's on Thursday, October 24th at 7 p.m. here, and it will be in the Forks Forum as a reminder, but please put it on your calendars. Thursday, October 24th is the next seminar. And
Did we get a sign-in sheet put out?
we didn't do that, should we?
Yeah, because Jordan needs that for,
Oh, that's right, Jordan needs that. Okay,
it's
so
not to collect any information, it's just numbers.
talk amongst yourselves just for a moment. I'm gonna go get a sign-in sheet that you can sign on the way out and, right back.
Must be important.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Yes,
So with the LiDAR that you do, with the airplane versus the UAS, I know that satellite LiDAR is getting like pretty crazy in terms of the resolution it can do. Do you know how that compares to the airplane and the UAS? Is that like in the data provenance that you have at all?
it's not, yeah, it's not, that's the short answer, yeah. The UAS, is probably always gonna be the highest density.
Right.
So you get just, you get a lot of people.